Motion to take note of the report of the House Committee on consideration of subsidiary legislation. Members who wish to speak, please press the Request to Speak button. Mr. Ronnie Chan will move a motion in accordance with Rule 49E(2) of the Rules of Procedure to take note of Minimum Wage Ordinance Amendment of Schedule 3, Notice 2026, in Report Number 5, 2026 of the House Committee. I will first call upon Mr. Ronnie Chan to speak and move the motion. Then I will call upon other members to speak. Finally, I will call upon the public officer to speak, and the debate will come to a close, and the motion will not be put to vote. Members are reminded to speak to the content of the subsidiary legislation. The objective of the motion is to announce the revised minimum hourly wage according to the new formula. Please focus on the contents of the subsidiary legislation. Do not speak on the policy matters involving the MSW. And now call upon Mr. Ronnie Chan to speak and move the motion. President, in the capacity of the Chairman of the House Committee, in accordance with Rule 49E(2) of the Rules of Procedure, I move the motion as printed on the agenda so the member may have a debate on Minimum Wage Ordinance Amendment of Schedule 3, Notice 2026, in Report Number 5, 2026 of the House Committee on consideration of the subsidiary legislation and other instruments. I so submit. I now propose the question to you that Mr. Ronnie Chan's motion be passed. Mr. Lam Chen Sing. Thank you, President. Now, the 2026 revision to the minimum wage proposed an increase of 2.38% to the minimum wage from $42.1 to $43.1. It has considered the economic growth factors, that is, the changes in the inflation rate of CPIA and also the GDP. Now, back in 2001, the government has frozen the minimum wage as $37.5 for 4 years. Grassroots workers did not receive a raise for 4 years. Now, with the new formula, as well as the more frequent review to a biannual review, the situation will not be repeated. Now, this is a yearly review. However, anyone can tell that if the statistics are based on the biannual figures, it would just be a $1 increase. The extent of increase is the same, in effect. Now, the CPIA changes are considered. However, in terms of the composition of the CPIA, for example, miscellaneous expenditure and transport, there is a 4% inflation. So for workers who need to cross to other districts to work, the increase in minimum wage is insufficient. Now, for the economic growth factor, the formula is deducting the trend growth rate of the real GDP in the last decade by the growth rate of the real GDP in the latest year. If the changes of the real GDP in the last decade is even, then an average would be taken. So the effect of the components is minimal. The major factor is the inflation in CPIA. However, it would result in grassroots workers not being able to share the economic growth benefits. So I hope the government can strengthen the weighting of CPIA in the future formula to allow grassroots workers to share the fruits of economic growth. Now, finally, it will bring about 0.01% of increase in the Consumer Price Index A. So even if you think the prices are higher in the supermarkets, it has nothing to do with the increase in minimum wage. There are some 40,000 employees affected by the change, and most employers are not affected. And also, in the future, the effect on employers will be minimal. I hope that the system will continue to ensure that grassroots workers can share the benefits of economic growth. I so submit. Mr. Zhao Xiuchong. present, the amendment of $42.1 to $43.1, the increase is 2.3% and it will take effect from the 1st of May. This is the first revised minimum wage after the yearly review system has been implemented. So we thank the government for that. But still, the level is still too low. 8 hours per day and working for a whole month, the salary is still lower than $9,000. Now the average rent for a subdivided unit is some $5,700. So not much money would be left for other uses. Now CPIA this year is a 1.9% inflation. Living cost is ever higher for the grassroots. However, the increase in minimum wage cannot catch up with the gap. Now, Hong Kong is one of the most expensive places to live in the world. However, compared with other jurisdictions with lower salaries, for example, Taiwan, in 2025, the median salary is some 9,400 Hong Kong dollars. The minimum wage is 46 Hong Kong dollars. South Korea, 2024, the median income is $16,300, but the minimum wage is 51 Hong Kong dollars. For Hong Kong, the median salary is $21,200, much higher than the above places. However, the revised minimum wage $43.1 is still much lower than the other two places. Now, the initial stage of the minimum wage, it covers 6.4% of the working population and affecting some 180,000 people. Now, after the adjustment, a lot fewer employees are now covered, so the function of safety net has been weakened. Now, in 2011, the minimum wage was $28. It has been adjusted to 42.1% by year 2025. However, in the same period, the nominal wage increase was 60.5%. It shows that the rates of adjustment still lag far behind the economic growth. That's unfair. Minimum wage is the bottom line of workers' dignity. It's also the bedrock of fairness in society. The low minimum wage level reflects the lack of respect to labourers. But the government should respect the figures and also continue to optimize the mechanism to ensure that grassroots workers can live in dignity. Thank you.
Mr. Zhang Pui-kong. Thank you, President. On behalf of the DAB, regarding the Minimum Wage Ordinance Amendment of Schedule 3 Notice 2026, I speak on behalf of the DAB, raising the statutory minimum wage from $42 to $43.10. This is the first adjustment after the revamped mechanism. This shows the transparent, fair, objective mechanism. It is delivering results. In the past, the review of statutory minimum wage was as long as 20 months. The tug of war between employers and employees seriously caused the adjustments to lag behind. The DAB has been advocating an annual review. Since 2025, the newly implemented formula has taken into account the composite CPI and economic growth factor with a ceiling. This has taken on board our advocation. The administrative efficiency has improved, allowing grassroots employees to share the economic success. The announcement embodies the implementation of the new mechanism. It's been implemented for 2 years. We believe it is important to add the economic environment factors. However, while it is important to protect workers, we need to maintain flexibility in responding to the extreme economic environment. The EXCO should be allowed to incorporate flexibility into reviewing the mechanism. We need to think from the overall interest and benefits of Hong Kong. We need to prevent a way of closures. We also need to react to any crises. The first task is that we need to ensure the stable implementation of the mechanism so that employers and employees will adapt to the new normal. At the same time, the government should also study how to further improve the proposals. There is a general view in society to review the functions of the minimum wage commission. Is it necessary to restructure the commission? Should we introduce more stakeholders in low-paid sectors? This will allow the commission to... Mr. Zhang, please discuss the ordinance. If we carry out a review, this will improve the mechanism and it will better reflect the situation in the grassroots employees. The DAB suggests in future, Mr. Zhang, I believe your speech has digressed from the main contents of the subsidiary legislation. Please go back to the contents of the subsidiary legislation. Well, I will be quick, President. We need to review the functions of the minimum wage commission. We need to better incorporate the views of employees and employers so that this will better reflect the situation in society. We also need to react to crises. We need to enhance the flexibility of the system in order to react to changes in the overall business environment. The position... Mr. Zhang, if you do not focus on discussing the subsidiary legislation, I will ask you to stop. Thank you, President. I so submit Mr. Lam Wai Kong. President, on behalf of the FTU, I speak in support of the minimum wage ordinance amendment of Schedule 3 Notice 2026, increasing the statutory minimum wage from $42.10 to $43.10, an increase of 2.38%, and it will come into effect on the 1st of May 2026. This has answered to the needs of and suggestions of the labor sector, carrying out an annual review, having a formula that will only increase the statutory minimum wage to forestall any excessively low statutory minimum wage. This has enhanced the predictability and the transparency of the system. This has allowed the statutory minimum wage to outpace inflation and prevent disputes. In accordance with the minimum wage ordinance, it is believed that the impact on the overall situation is minor, and it is believed that employers can cope. However, the base factor is still on the low side. The increase is still modest. The economic growth factor in the formula is still modest, and it fails to cover the majority of low-income groups. The government said that after the rollout of the mechanism, there will be a review. The FTU suggests reviewing the implementation of the ordinance. In future reviews, the formula should be enhanced. For example, the economic growth factor, the multiplication factor should be increased from 20%. This will make sure that when the Hong Kong economy fares well, workers in Hong Kong can share the economic success. And this will also enhance the sense of satisfaction on the part of workers. Thank you. This will also reduce on-the-job poverty. Thank you. Mr. Jonathan Leung. Thank you, President. The minimum wage ordinance amendment of Schedule 3 Notice 2026 will come into effect on the 1st of May without vote. I'd like to express my views. The statutory minimum wage is never a panacea. In fact, the F&B sector has long duty hours. It works in shifts. There is recruitment difficulty. The average wage of waiters and waitresses is between 65 and 78. Monthly wages 18,000 to 20,000. For dishwashers, monthly wages around $20,000 with an hourly wages of $70 to $80, surpassing the statutory minimum wage of $43.10. It seems that on the surface the SMW has no impact on the F&B sector, but we need to take into account the cascading effect. The increased SMW will only benefit a minority of grassroots employees. Historical figures show that the reason wage adjustments has limited impact. From 2011 to 2025, the statutory minimum wage has an accumulative increase of 50% for the F&B sector, 75.8%, and the past a lot of eateries related to us that an increase in the SMW caused a ripple effect. Their expenditure could go up by thousands, and this is indeed a heavy burden on the F&B sector. After the pandemic, the economic recovery pace is not in line with our expectations. There is also the impact of traveling north for consumption. Despite an increase in inbound visitors, the consumption pattern changes have caused the local F&B sector to benefit much less. From biennial review to annual review, new formula, this will only stifle the operation of the F&B sector. 2,000 eateries have already closed, and the situation will only worsen in 2026. And I believe eateries will not recklessly shift the cost burden onto patrons. Apart from passing the cost burden to patrons, the competitiveness will be undermined. I hope that the government will review the mechanism, especially the formula, in order to avoid automatic upward adjustment in the system. We need to take into account how best the industry can afford the manpower costs. And I also hope that the administration will set up the Catering Industry Development Fund I shall submit.
If there's no other member who would like to speak, I will now call upon the public officer to speak, then the debate will come to a close. Secretary for Labor and Welfare. President, I would like to thank Mr. Chun-ying, the Chairman of the House Committee, for proposing this motion on the Minimum Wage Ordinance Amendment of Schedule 3 Notice 2026, and the 5 members who have spoken on the motion earlier. The Council, taking note of this report, this motion echoes the views of the Minimum Wage Commission on its method of adjustment of minimum wage, and there has been enhancement. Before we would have biannual review, now we have an annual review, and before we would have tripartite discussions. It can get very controversial. There has been much dispute. Both the staff side and the employer side are unhappy. Now, in 2023, the Minimum Wage Commission derived a new mechanism adopting a formula, and in 2024, it received the consent of the Chief Executive in Council. We now have a mechanism that can better help those receiving statutory minimum wage. We will be able to prevent excessively low wages, but it also takes into account how we have to maintain competitiveness of Hong Kong. President, if you will allow it, I want to talk about the benefits of the formula. We have, with this mechanism, annual reviews. Before, it would be difficult. Now it is easy to conduct annual reviews, and as I said earlier, it accounts for the needs of low-income earners because it only allows for upward adjustments but not downwards adjustment. But then we understand there is concern from the business sector, which is why for the economic growth factor, we have set a cap. So the cap is 1%, the minimum is 0. But it is not easy to reach the cap. Basically, you would have to have 5% above the 10-year average in order to reach the cap. And if that is the case, Hong Kong's economy has performed really well and we should be happy. For low-income earners, we have this formula, inflation and economic growth factor. The respective minimums are 0. So even though with deflation, if we still have an economic growth, low-income earners will still benefit. They don't cancel out each other in the formula, which is why low-income earners will really benefit, so that when either indicator is above 0, they will have an increase in SMW rate. Despite what the commercial sector says, market operations are not really affected by any changes in the SMW rate. There are many other factors affecting market performance. But I guess we just have to say that there is minimum wage to protect grassroots. This is a minimum protection. We cannot also compare the SMW rate with that of other jurisdictions because we have different systems. We need to have regard to our local circumstances and make continuous improvement to our system to protect those receiving statutory minimum wage. We also have to have regard to economic competitiveness and make sure we have a favorable business environment in order to achieve a win-win situation. With this annual review mechanism for SMW, it is a win-win for all, and from what I heard, members who have spoken agree and express support. The new SMW rate will come into effect on 1st of May 2026, and then it will be adjusted to $43.1. In accordance with Rule 49E9 of the Rules of Procedure, I would not put any question on the motion. And now adjourn the Council until 11 in the morning on Wednesday, 1st of April 2026.